Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, thanks to the team over at Bombusby, we're going to be taking a look at the DNA Design DK-31 upgrade kit for the Transformers Kingdom Titan class ARK. Now it is currently available and in stock over at Bombusby, so for that of course I'll be sure to pack a link down in the description box below. And this is actually my second time recording this review. First time round, sadly, my hard drive did decide to hit self-destruct and I lost all of those original files, meaning that this time round I am going to be unable to in fact actually show the installation process for certain components, as they'll be pretty difficult to remove without actually damaging the ARK itself, but I'll be sure to touch base with what those components are throughout the video. Now the ARK was undeniably one of the coolest items that we saw from Transformers Kingdom. It was in fact the first time that the ARK had received the Generations treatment, and for the most part I think it turned out pretty awesome, but sadly, considering that it is still a mainline release, there were definitely some corners cut, and most of those corners really did lay in kind of the sides here of the ARK in the ship mode. And this is where DNA Design come in. So as we just turn our attention here to the side of the ship, an issue which the majority of collectors, myself included, had would be in regards to these massive hollow spaces that we've got on these particular sides. Now this is undeniably due to transformation. You do in fact actually have to swivel this section down and this will become the knee of the robot mode. So I can kind of see as to why it would have been near enough impossible for Hasbro to have created a filler piece without it having to become detached when we actually got it into robot mode. But DNA Design have basically gone ahead and created their own pieces, and just to showcase as to what they are, you can see here that we've got this massive orange section which has been sculpted and painted pretty nicely, and the color match is near enough spot on to what you're actually seeing here for this side panel. Now the way this integrates is that you can see we've got two tabs here and here that essentially are just going to slide into some hollow spaces there on the base and some there at the top. Now it can be a little fiddly to actually get them to lock into place, so I will try my absolute best to in fact actually get this here tabbed in. You do just want to overlap that into place and it will snap just like so, and in my opinion that is such an improvement. Now granted, when we actually get this transformed up into robot mode, you will have to detach the panel and then reinstall it, so none of these components really integrate into the transformation, but as mentioned previously, I think it would have been near enough impossible to have done that without completely redesigning the leg section, and that is more than likely as to why Hasbro did just leave it as it was. You'll also notice how we have a hollow space here. That's because we're then going to want to bring in yet another filler piece. This too has been sculpted and cast out of a very similar color of orange to the actual ARK itself, and this simply does just snap there into place, completely filling out that hollow void. And at least in my opinion here, from a side perspective and even kind of from this angle, the ARK looks near enough perfect now. This really has perfected pretty much one of the biggest issues that I had with this piece, and in my opinion it's one of the most effective kits that DNA Design have put out for quite some time. Then we turn our attention here to the bed of the ARK. You'll notice that for the most part it did actually come together pretty nicely, but there were two ghastly hollow spaces that plagued the rear, that being this section and some here at the back. And this is where DNA Design have once again gone ahead and designed some filler pieces. Now in order to actually match the overall aesthetic of the ARK itself, they have fully sculpted as well as painted some turrets which look almost identical to the sculpts that we've got here already by Hasbro, and much like those side filler pieces have been cast out of the correct color of orange, and these basically do just snap there into place, filling out those hollow components and looking really seamless and literally as if though they are already a part of the sculpt. Now as we just flip our attention here to the back, the kit does actually include a filler piece for this command deck. Now as mentioned before, I did actually show the installation process of this on my original review, but considering I've lost those files and it would be near enough impossible to pry this out without in fact potentially damaging the plastic, I'm only going to be able to show you guys the finished effect. But for those of you who recall, this was completely hollowed out and at least from the back looked really ugly and cheap, so it is cool to see that they did include this piece, and I think the sculpt as well as the color match once more is near enough perfect. Now in regards to kind of the installation of the turret for this section, considering this piece does open up due to transformation, they have designed it slightly differently when in comparison to this one. So you'll notice here on the underside we actually have a latch so that when you do hinge this up it does stay connected. With this one it's more or less just kind of held in via friction, and considering you don't mess around with that, it is always just going to kind of stay into place. But if they were to carry over the exact same piece here for this side, when you were to pull this up it would have detached straight away. So it is cool that it is as distinct piece, and basically you just latch that there over the top, and that there is how the other turret does store into the ARK itself. I believe it's actually this side that the latch pegs onto, so it does sit flushly along the bed. And once more, I think that there looks fantastic. Now, as we just flip here to this side, I have already gone ahead and indeed filled out this entire section, and I just think it looks glorious. So that in a nutshell is pretty much all of the upgrade components here for the ARK when in ship mode. Undeniably the mode that I know many collectors will be purchasing this kit for, as it was definitely not without its flaws, and at least in my opinion, this kit really does make this the definitive representation of such an iconic Autobot ship. It really now does look almost 100% complete. It maybe would have just been cool had they added something to have attached onto this. I don't think it would have been too difficult, considering we've got two circular ports. They could have maybe found a way to have attached some kind of component so that it would have just blended in with the overall colorization, but still definitely not a big deal by any stretch of the imagination. I think the turrets look great, the filler piece with the command deck looks awesome, and in particular would be here for these side panels. Now, taking a look here at the ARK in its robot mode, you'll notice straight away that I have already gone ahead and of course pre-installed the all new articulated fingers, and that is the most significant change that you'll see here for the robot mode. And in my opinion, these look fantastic. Not only is the sculpt work almost exactly what we would expect from Hasbro, but I think the attention to detail, as well as just how many segmented joints are in one of the fingers, is just incredible. Now you can see we do get a full range, so a complete ratchet joint. The thumb here does have a swivel as well as a hinge joint going up and down. The same can also be said here for the tip and of course the base, and the fingers themselves are awesome. So these can be completely splayed open, which I thought was fantastic. They can hinge in upon themselves, bend there at the actual knuckle, and of course they're at the tip, and at least in my opinion really do make this feel like a proper Titan class release, very similar to what we would expect from, say, the likes of Fortress Maximus and Metroplex, and if anything even better, considering we are getting a much greater range of motion. Now, as I just bring in one of the stock hands that already came with the figure first time round, these actually weren't too bad. I think in regards to sculpt work they were pretty decent, but it was really just in regards to the articulation that these were flawed in. They were pretty much a brick. Now, the thumb had a hinge joint, but it was pretty awkward. It literally just kind of hinged out to the side, which didn't look natural, and let's be honest, didn't really help for many posability options. And the four fingers were all conjoined, meaning that they could only be hinged forwards and backwards, so definitely not as versatile as these new hands that we're seeing from DNA Design. I really do think these ones here look absolutely fantastic. Now, in regards to the installation process, essentially all you have to do is unscrew these three here on the inside, pull out this section, and it is just a matter of switching the hands out and then just combining them. It is by far the most straightforward and simplistic kit to install for a very long time by DNA Design. It was a lot more simplistic than the likes of their kit for MPM-12 and even for Galvatron. So yeah, I definitely think they look awesome. And now, of course, considering we can splay these fingers open, not only can you get the command gesture, but we can also take Optimus Prime and kind of have him being grasped by the ARK, much like you would expect from, say, the likes of a War for Cybertron video game. I guess all this guy really needs is some form of firepower, as he is, I believe, the only Titan not to come with any handheld weapon. So a huge sword or some kind of blaster, I think, is definitely on the horizon, especially considering that DNA Design have sculpted the palm in a way that would most certainly actually accommodate some kind of weapon. So I am definitely thinking that perhaps in the future we're going to see another upgrade kit from them for this particular character. But there are also a few other upgrades to install in this, guys, so let's take a look at the lower legs. So for this, you're going to want to turn your attention here to the back. Now, truth be told, I actually didn't have much of an issue with these at all, considering it was at the back of the figure, and these pieces do kind of flip forward for transformation. It really was never anything that bothered me in particular, but considering that we're already going to be utilizing these components for ship mode, I think that it is just kind of a nice bonus, a nice throwaway method in kind of storing them away if you do decide to keep this guy in bot form. So we're going to want to take those side panels that we saw when he was transformed into the ship and essentially combine them. So just take this smaller piece and peg it here into the lower part, and much like you saw for ship mode, there are some hollow spacing here on the interior that these two tabs are essentially going to lock into. It continues to amaze me just how DNA Design make use of some of these hollow gaps, some of these slots that are featured on the mainline figures. They really do integrate almost seamlessly. So very similar method to before. You do just want to wedge that in there and it should snap there into place, something along the lines of that. And once more, looks as if though it is in fact actually a part of the figure. The color match is near enough perfect. My white balance is throwing it off ever so slightly, but when you actually get it in hand, truth be told, there really isn't much of a difference at all. And just for a comparison, here of course we have the side which has the kit, and there is the stock version by Hasbro. And despite me not really having much of an issue with this, undeniably this here definitely looks a lot better. So I'll quickly showcase how you can do it here for this side. So just snap that in there, and once more align up those hollow spaces with the tabs and just lock all that there into place. And so, some final thoughts for the DNA Design DK-31 upgrade kit for the Transformers Kingdom Titan class ARK. Overall, I think it's an incredibly effective yet simplistic kit to install. As far as the actual ship mode is concerned, it fixes pretty much all of the issues that I and many other reviewers and collectors had first time round, that being the glaring hollow spacing along the side of the ship. Those filler pieces really do make all of the difference, and whilst they don't integrate into the transformation, I really do think they look pretty seamless when installed into that ship. I am a huge fan of the filler piece for the back section of that almost command tower, and in regards to the additional turrets that we can peg into the hollow spacing kind of on the actual bed of the ARK, I once again think is a really nice touch and just overall makes the ARK an almost solid 10 out of 10. As far as some of the integration is concerned for the robot mode, of course mainly we're going to be discussing those articulated hands. I think they're fantastic. As far as an articulation standpoint is concerned, leaps and bounds better when in comparison to the stock version. Those hands are probably some of the most articulated that I own in my entire collection, and as far as any articulated hands that we've seen officially from Hasbro, these ones absolutely blow them out of the water. They pose around in pretty much any way that you want. If I were to have a critique here in regard to the robot mode, it would be that I would have loved for them to have included some form of firepower, especially considering that the palm of the hand has been specifically designed to hold some kind of weapon. Whether or not they're saving that for a future release, I guess we'll just have to wait and see, but considering this kit is specifically for the ARK, it would have been cool to have just gotten it here with this piece. Whilst I personally never really had a huge issue with some of the hollowness that went on for the back of the legs when in robot mode, it is nice to kind of make use of some of those excess ship mode components and just kind of fill out some of those hollow spacing, and I do think for the most part it works incredibly well. So with all that being said, if you own the ARK and you weren't a huge fan of some of those gaps that it had in the ship mode and you are looking for articulated fingers for the robot mode, then I definitely think this here is the kit for you. And as mentioned earlier, it is by far one of the most simplistic kits to install out of all of the most recent ones that DNA Design have released. So with all that being said, it is currently available and in stock right now over at Bombusby, and for that of course I'll be sure to pack a link down in the description box below. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and of course I thank you guys all so much for watching. Until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.